Right, so this evening I'm going to work in acrylic paints. I've got a brown board which I primed with some purpley colour, and I'm looking at the photographs I've taken from Ben Nevis a couple of weeks ago when I climbed it first time. It was spectacular. Going up, and the views were absolutely amazing. I didn't expect, I thought we were just going to stay in a cloud, but honestly, the clouds were moving so fast around me. So I thought, if I'll take a number of photographs, I can combine my composition of what I'm going to do. So I'm really interested in seeing some snow at the foreground. I can see part of the cliff coming close to the peak. I can see a bit of the landscape, some white clouds right at the back, almost as if I'm sitting on a plane. And I really love that curvature of the dark cloud, but I really like that pattern of it in there. So I'm going to combine two images. So the proportions of them not quite right, the proportion of the image. So I've decided to make it quite elongated. So I've done a little sketch, which is very, very rough. But that gives me an idea how much space I'm going to spend for the snow, for the view behind, how much of white clouds I'm going to have, on rough dynamics of the big cloud coming at the front. So I'll keep my sketch in front of me. So some thinking, some planning has been done. And I'll start sketching straight away using my thin round brush. Now I've got loads of very pale clouds, very whitish clouds. I don't want them to be too monochromatic. I'm going to try to introduce as much color as I can. So I'll start sketching with some paler purpley and ochre type of color, just to get some of the layout. I'm going to have a very small amount of snow at the front. I need to make sure that that snow is going to be not overly white as well. So I'm going to have a little dip down here, and it's going to raise up slightly. So I want a bit more of a dynamic type of line. Okay, so that's going to come here. Now, important part of the cliff is here as well. This might be just disappearing. Okay, maybe if I'll just do a tiny bit more higher. Okay, when I work with the snow, I can decide how much white I'm going to put, maybe put some of it in a bit more in the shadow. Right, this chunk of a cliff, it was almost, if you come close to the edge, there was a sheer drop. So the footprints were finishing good distance away. If it would have been foggy, you wouldn't have known where the sheer drop would be, and you can just, to be honest, disappear there. But luckily, it wasn't all foggy for me. Right, now I need to find, so that's about there. And it's going to be nice and dark, and that's going to be hopefully a nice, strong contrast. Then the next section is going to be where my clouds are going to be, the layer of clouds, which are just in front of me. It was honestly, it's just like on the plane. You're sitting on the plane, and they just pass in front of you, and so quickly changing as well, unbelievably. By the time you get the camera ready, everything's changed. It was super, super fast changing scenery. Okay, we're gonna have a nice big chunk of a cloud somewhere here. So I'm just looking at kind of that shape of it. Somewhere there. It was just so, so impressive. I was very lucky as well. There weren't many people there as well. left super early in the morning. And it didn't feel like we're actually going to be catching up with a lot of people at all, which I was very surprised. Later on the way back, there were more, but when we were at the top, definitely maybe a handful of people. Oh, that's all. Right, so that's going to be my main. That's a violet as well. I thought that's with black. Let me get some black out. I'll squeeze the wrong color. And a bit of black so I can make my cloud a little bit more stronger here. Okay, you can't see that. So that means that I need to go a little bit lighter actually. Okay, and it's going to be a big wacky cloud. And to have it really coming out as a big shape. Really want to have that feel of movement, how everything is just opening in front of us. There'll be loads of dark section of the sky there. Okay, so there'll be loads of stunning blue there as well. Okay, so that's my quick sketch here. Okay. So my sponge is coming up. I'm going to put it in the water, soak it all in. And then I'll use some white. Use some white. A little bit of ochre. A little bit of violet. Okay, maybe a bit more of that color. Need to have it quite dark. Okay, and some black. So it will be not just pinky violet color, but nice and dark. Okay, a little bit more. Maybe a small amount of blue here. Okay, I need to have something heavy here. Okay, let's mix it. All right, so I'm trying to keep all the paint on one side of my sponge. So it doesn't take all of it. Okay, let's do this big cloud here. Okay, I think it needs a little bit more darkness. Let's go for this lighter space first. It's reasonably flat in color, but then it's got that transparency as well. When I'll start painting the sky behind, but these big strokes, that's what I'm interested in. That's exciting. I taped up the borders with a masking tape just to see if it will help me later on to create a little bit more of a clear edge for it and some fresher look. Okay, all this will need to stay quite dark. So I'm back to the palette, mixing similar color but a little darker. So let's prepare a slightly darker version of the same color. Okay, that's very dark and it's quite blue. I want it a little bit more into the violet side. Okay, grayish, bluish tiny bit more blue. It doesn't look as dark as I want it to, unless my cloud is drying already and it's changing the darkness. No, I think I can go a tiny bit more darker still. And a tiny bit more. Okay, let's try this one. That's very blue again. Have to persevere mixing that color and keep testing it. Okay, it's kind of there. Okay, we're getting there. Let's keep that corner quite dark. Been climbing up them. The path is so hot because obviously constantly going up and up and up and up and up. And then suddenly you're in a snow area. You're still very warm. But by the time you're trying to find your way around, it becomes quite cold. So by the time we got our coats out of the box and got changed, it was getting very cold. Okay, so the clouds is taking a lot of space and it's quite simple, but if it will take me to paint it and repaint it a number of times, I wouldn't be surprised with that, because I don't think I'll be happy with it after the first few takes. Okay, as a starting point, this is okay. Okay, let's get some darker tone here as well. Okay, a tiny bit more darker. I was an absolute just standing there and just taking it all in. Everybody had their cameras out. But it was just fascinating just to, it was like a film in front of you, just moving picture. Opening and closing. You can see the mountains here. You can't see the mountains here. You can see what's behind. You can't see what's behind. Okay, let's do it more like this for now. Yeah, as it's drying, it slightly gives me different colors. So I might be patient and let it settle in before working into it further. Okay, let's get some dark sky behind this cloud here. Okay, let's get some of that dark blue in. Nice quirky lines. I'll try to where the clouds overlap in some of the darker areas of the sky. Becoming a little bit more fluffier. Gonna have some paler color as well. So I've got some sharp edges for the sky here, but also want to have some paler and soft edges that just block some of that coloring first. Just to see the feel for it. And the violet background really makes it stand out. Nice and fresh blue right next to this dark, heavy cloud. So I'm a bit smudging all the colors. I'll work with the brush shortly and get some fresher colors as well. Let's just work a little with some of these shapes. How the clouds are soft and how they're moving. Now the mountains under the clouds got a little bit of resemblance of some of that pale blue as well. I think maybe just the perspective might not stay as fresh blue, but might have a hint of that blue in there, a little bit more further back. So for now, it's also uniting the painting here at this stage, especially. Also, using a sponge allows me to work a little bit softer, almost if I'm doing an oil painting. Let's get some of these clouds here. Again, I'm probably way out of the range of the tone I need, but that softness of the sponge allows me to keep moving with the acrylics softly enough. Okay, let's just get some of those nice, big, white, fluffy areas. Get some first impression with them. Okay, let's get a tiny bit of grey at the bottom of it. Okay, that's now just a rough plan in here. Going on nicely. And let's just brush, well, I'll say brush, but just gently touch some of these clouds now. Again, with a hint of warmth in them in comparison to much more cooler colors for the lower clouds. That's how I'm planning to differentiate between the space. Which clouds are really, that big cloud felt like it was right. I can almost And if I stand on the edge of that cliff there, I could almost touch it. When the other ones would have been way further away. So the sponge allows me to have some wider surfaces. At the same time, quite thin, so the layers could be seen. Okay, this one again. As it's slightly drying here. Or just make it a tiny bit more volumey for it to stand out. It looks at the moment slightly similar in tone as some of these clouds, but it's all quite pale, quite reasonably watery layer than the sponge, so it's all dry, much paler, much darker, sorry. Okay. Right, and let's do the foreground, just to offset things here as well. I think I might make it a little bit more turquoise type of blue snow, pale, but using a little bit of emerald green in it. Emerald green and phthalo blue with whatever the colors I had on my palette here. Sketch one down, and now I'm going to put some of this paler. Now the most light colors are going to stay in these clouds in the middle. Then it's going to be the foreground white, and then it's going to be the white on the clouds right in front of us. So as I'm building up everything with a sponge, and let's just put this a little bit lighter. And the cliff edge of the snow looks a tiny bit darker, so I don't want it to be too light. Okay, and then the cliff itself, what we can see is looking solid, almost like a dark indigo type of color. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to block it in as a dark chunk. To show that sharpness of that area. Okay. And then there will be a couple of dark tones for the landscape at the back. And then I can pick up a brush to work with a brush. So the dark areas in the landscape are the areas where there are shadows from the clouds on the mountains and the hills and the valleys below. So Fort William is right below down there. And we're looking towards the Skye, island of Skye, and the sea. Okay, so that's going to be there. Tiny bit more green at the front. Maybe somewhere here. Dark greeny browny type of color. Trim that space I've exaggerated slightly. Okay, so I've got loads of nice dark tones. I'll bring some pale ones now. A little bit of ochre, just to show some of the open spaces in the moors, and some areas with the heathers, or maybe just simply even the light is still traveling and not covered by the shadows. And very rough, just practicing, just placing some of the color as test. Seeing how the colors interact. And what to bring in the future, or maybe avoid, at least in big quantities. Right, I really like the background color, the initial background, the purpley color. I think that works very nice. That is a good color. Maybe a tiny bit of extra light somewhere in the back. A little bit too strong yellow, but when it dries, I can soften that and create a little bit more space behind. Okay, this is a good start. So clean my hands after the sponge so I can move and start working with brushes. Right, so let's now focus on a little bit more on the bold shapes of the clouds here. I'm going to use a flat brush, flat synthetic brush. I'll need much more white. So I can focus on some big strokes. And And let's mix some paler. I'm going to use some ochre and white to give the very, very small amount of ochre, just to give tiny bit more of a warmth for the lightest parts of the clouds. I just want to establish some of the bolder shapes. So for example, this one could really stand out. I'll use a tiny bit more water. That's all. Be nice and strong. Okay, that's doesn't come out on the screen for some reason as textured as it is actually on the painting. So carry on and see if my camera will adjust gently as I'm developing more light. It's not a big bold shape of light somewhere here. It seems to be disappearing and smudging into nice grays. Okay. So I'm more interested into that energy, flowing energy of light than just painting pretty clouds. But I think I need a clean sponge here. So I'm going to wash my sponge and start working with it as almost like a razor, almost like with using a charcoal and a razor, where my white paint or whitish paint is going to be just softened or partially washed off or smudged. Okay, that might be an interesting scenario here. I can wipe things off clean and at the same time reintroduce some bolder highlights. That's a nice flat cloud here. And there is another one coming up right here. And then another one. Okay, some of these shapes look a bit too similar. They will need to go a little bit more purpley gray. Tiny bit more purple here. We've got the clouds which are going slightly flat. They're breaking up. They're almost kind of a similar dark type of clouds we've got above us. Which is breaking up some of the space between the very light clouds. There's another one somewhere here. Although I did like that depth. So maybe I can still reinforce it, but maybe in a different color. Okay, tiny bit more. Building up of that darkness. Okay. So this painting is going to be made of a lot of soft, spontaneous marks, and then just occasionally it will be touched up by sharper sections or sharper strokes. Oh, I really like this lovely area. Very nice. Maybe just let it dry and see how it's all settled in. Let's build up some depths, maybe somewhere here. So I'll put some darker tone and I'll just soften it. So just it's some reminders to some of the watercolor techniques of working quite soft, diluting certain things at the same time. A little bit of similarities how you'd work with the oil, because the paint stays wet and you can just keep dragging it. But it's all in acrylics. Okay, so this could be now built up a little bit stronger. Okay, when I'm working with a sponge, doing, let's say, little highlights, it's hard to control the exact place where I'm putting the paint. I love the texture from it. I love that softness. I love that zigzaggy line, which I probably wouldn't be able to do so freely with a brush. But not being able to be as precise as with a brush gives its own disadvantages with the technique. Okay, there's some sort of sharpness going on here. Okay, a bit more of a clearer space. I think I'll put a tiny bit of light on that end as well. Okay, let's give the sky a little break, at least those clouds. Let's come back to the ground. Let's establish some of the highlights on that. And some of this areas with a brush this time. Let's get some extra paper towels. And wash my brush. So you can see where my borders are. I'm going to put a dark line where almost on the edge of my masking tape. So you can just see a little bit of the edge. So it doesn't make sense how far I'm gonna go. And the same here. It just gives it a tiny bit more feel of belonging of. Obviously there will be colors continuing as well, but on the screen it's a little bit easier to get lost. Okay. Let's get some paler colors now for the ground. So there will be some ochres. I'm going to get some crimson, my pinky red, so I can have some orangey colors made. This ochre red to have a bit of extra desirable kind of nice, really the areas which you're interested to explore, the eye will be drawn to it. So a hint of warmth from pink and violet and ochre. Okay, let's have a look how that this is, might give me. Okay, so that's a good one, but maybe not in this place. Feels like I could do with it somewhere here. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating some of the red, but it's looking quite in the right place. Okay, a little bit more ochre here. That's a good one as well. Just going to top up the amount of color for that. Okay, tiny bit more, maybe darker. A hint more violet and a hint more red with it. Okay, the color is not changing, so means I need to increase that droplet of color. Okay. Let's work around this cliff. It's quite a round edge. Tiny bit dilute some of the paint. So when I start putting some strokes here, the paint will settle in when it's dry, settle in with an existing colors. I want to almost melt, interact with background shapes and the colors. Again, I'm interested in impression of it rather than painting the exact place. I want to have that feel of light behind or under the clouds. So let's work with that color combination rather than just a shape. That's where my sponge will come in again. Give it a tiny bit of softness. Okay, the sponge could take a lot of color off as well. Okay, it does take quite a lot of color off. Let's just see how it will start drying. Right, let's bring extra darkness to this edge. Nice and solid. Almost like an orca popping its head from the water. That's very strong contrast of black and white. So I'm going to paint it black and then add highlights. This was a gorgeous ridge to it. Okay. And a little rock protruding as well. Now the actual rock was somewhere here, but I think it just makes it a little bit silly looking, so I want it to come up somewhere here. Maybe even with an extra rock edge. Maybe sharpening part of this corner, giving a bit of extra depth. I'll wait for this area to dry before I start adding extra depth to it. But some of that sharper, again, just such a soft, gentle, it's something, small amount of that darkness here and there is enough to tell how the light is traveling, how quick the moment is. How clear the view is, and then suddenly you're all in a fog. I think that's what I'm trying to show. That sharpness and then it disappearing kind of into the fog movement. Okay, so maybe some extra, maybe a little dark mark to show a little sharpness before it moves again very softly. Into the background. Oops, I've lifted it, or have I? No, I'm just smudging it. Mm-hmm. A tiny bit of something in the horizon, something tiny bit more extra darker. Just showing that flatness of the clouds. Okay, this might be a little bit more solid in darkness, so it's not going to be too transparent. It's going to just cover it more flatly. So then finally some light can protrude there as well. So it's very important to paint the whole atmosphere of the area rather than, okay, this is a specific hill or that's a specific something. Almost you can find your location, it's extremely important to see those shapes, if it's up or down the mountain or if it's just a shadow from the cloud, it doesn't matter. Okay, quite like that. Okay, so I'm starting to see the depths. That's what I want. I want that depth. I'm standing here, I've got that sharp edge, and then I've got that extreme vastness of space, extreme distance away. And then the clouds just hanging over that area. Let's just see how that one dries. Right, tiny bit of snow on this ochre-like cliff. If I'll go for dark grey first, because the whole area is very, very dark. My dark grey, probably that's a type of color, dark grey. So it's super dark. But if I'll put it on the edge here, it should be enough light. At the same time, it should give me that pattern of the snow. And maybe make this section a tiny bit bigger. I quite like how it's happened, but I think the other section is going to be small in sizes. So, okay, some part of this snow looks similar in darkness and color to the foreground. Maybe I'll need to vary that light here eventually. So quite flat highlights here. All right, there's something needs to be darker there, so lighter there, but the shapes looks too similar to the one below. Okay, ended up smudging the whole cliff. I'm guessing the black hasn't quite dried. My indigo black. That's okay. Ah, that looks like it's in the fog. That's an interesting effect. I didn't expect, but let's leave it there for a moment. Maybe it will be good to keep, maybe not. I think I'm also going to have a tiny bit of snow on this part of the rock as well, just to give it some sort of similar feel, how it's been blinded by the light. And that turquoisey color of the blue I used, that's really nice. I might need to bring some more of it back. So fellow blue and emerald green will give me that beautiful turquoisey color. And let's see if I can just bring it. Oh yes. Beautiful. Just need to have a soft edge to it. And for that, ideally I need my clean sponge, which is no longer clean. I do it with a tissue and see how it's all dry. Stronger, so it's not going to dry paler. And also maybe some part of that light spreading. It also might have a hint of that light on my rock. No, it's too bright. Quite like the idea, but in its placement, it's too strong. I'm going to remove that one, and I'm going to have a quick break as I need to change my water and wash my sponge really well, as I'm starting to smudge everything, contaminating, okay, everything else. Okay, so I'll smudge my beautiful clip as well as the paint didn't dry. Not to worry, I'll have to come back to it. So that's what I'll do quickly now. Well, I've got my colors on the palette while I haven't tried. So I have that shape back. Part of this one back. That's staying smudged. Now, I can sharpen it up by bringing the fresh dark indigo black. And adding stronger color back to this stage. Let's see how that one dries. And maybe just work with extra textures on it. Okay. Got some of that sharpness back. That's good. Maybe that extra dark could come across just to show a bit more of a ridge. Yep, that's looking good. That's looking good. Right, let's have a little break and wash all the brushes, sponges. So let's get some fresh color for the sky. My fellow blue and emerald green with some white. And I'm going to come right back to the clouds, the lower level of clouds. And let's get some fresh blue. Tiny bit darker maybe. And then it will go again slightly darker. But then I want to have that aura of big blue sky, not just a lot of dull, strong color. So that depths will remain behind But the bolder, fresher colors will still be around. Tiny bit paler still at the bottom of the area here. Maybe not all similar in color. Maybe let's have less turquoise there, but more paler blue. And then again darker blue, fellow blue going up. And then we can mix it. I can mix it with some violet and indigo and ultramarine to have small amounts of it slightly coming through the fluffy clouds. That's a bit too dark, so let's just soften it here. Again, I need to keep going with big strokes. It's a lot of large areas of even darknesses or even shapes within the sky. Some texture left. So I can't fiddle with small strokes. Okay, maybe that's where the sponge will come in. And give me a little extra color merge, color stretch. Find that shape back again. I was very excited about its the colors. A little bit lost its shape. It's almost like a funky looking trombone. What's happening with that zigzaggy cloud? How it's moving about. Okay, I'm forgetting myself. Where is the masking tape in comparison to the actual sketch? So let's bring some of those colors together a little more. So they don't look so, the moment the color on the clouds is looking very different to the color of the sky next to it, so they need to be a little bit more united. At least I'm finding its boundaries a bit now. Again, I've shrunk it, but now I'm looking at the better sky color. I've run out of ochre, so let's get a bit of ochre. So I'm back to similar color again. That even warms, maybe not as pink, but that definitely grayish warmth in it. Just trying to gradually build up some of those highlights. Gradually letting them settle within these volumes. Building up the layers. Kind of keeping the colors in using the same palette. Wash the sponge, and I just touch up the bottom of those clouds now. Let's see how it will dry as well. So in some places I'm pressing quite a lot with a sponge. You might keep some of that color I'm introducing, or it might soften the previous layer. That looks quite pointy, but again, once the masking tape is removed, then the pointiness will be gone. Right, let's get some more highlights here now. While the sponge is soft and not too strong, and the paint is still quite smudgy. Okay, let's get that nice overall big highlight. Okay, just don't run here, please. Exciting, exciting, exciting. It's drying, still a tiny bit lighter than I wanted to. So darker than I wanted to. I need a bit more patience here as well. Soft, soft, soft. Can I have that transparency of the clouds being on Nevis? Can I have that most magical light? Which kept me mesmerized for the rest of my trip, really. Right, let's stop on that cloud now. And let's do a little bit more work now on the little clouds. Break that shape down a little. Right. I need to work a tiny bit more on the sky around the clouds. Let's just see where I am with that. So for example, some of the areas maybe below some of the top layers of those clouds. So you are watching a classic example of the creative process, which is very experimental. I know the effects I want to get, I know the final outcome I want to get, but I have very little idea how I'm gonna get there, except by try and error. So this is my working out stage. What is going to be effective here and what's going to be banned for the larger painting in the future. Because I'd like to have this composition, if it works, to be enlarged to a similar scale work I was doing last week, you know, about 2 meters by a meter. Actually, this one is a little bit, tiny bit different proportion, maybe 2 meter, 30 by a meter, something like that. So it's a little bit, not quite 2 squares together. And that's my initial thinking here. So let's get some paler sky behind some of these clouds to show a little bit more depth behind it. It is a nice sunny day. And let's work on some of these clouds and build up carefully some of the subtones. So what I've done so far, I've got almost 2 or 3 tones. I've got the most light, the medium tone, and the gray. So I need to divide the whites, I need to subdivide the grays, I need to subdivide the darks. To get started, I need to get rid of most of my blue from the brush and have much more cleaner brush, maybe more into the cool side or purpley side. Okay, so that's a new subtone to the light. It is a little bit more cooler one. Now this stage, I'm looking at my photograph and looking for some sort of reference. I don't even have that specific area on the photograph. I'm kind of looking in the photograph where I could have certain darknesses, how they're merging with some paler whites. Okay, I'll get my sponge ready just in case if I need to have a softer edges. I think I might need to have a few brushes on a go here at some point. while they're all wet to build up various tones. Okay, that's where we make and practice tonal ladders. Now I'm in a situation when I need to do that small change of tones. Bear in mind, I'm not going to lose the shapes I created so spontaneously. I'll just need to work into them a little bit more creatively, but if that spontaneous breakup of tones will disappear, I might need to start from the beginning with a sponge to establish those darknesses. Right, I need a tiny bit more black. Maybe if I'll focus on one cloud, maybe just in this area, and see how it's works out before I start spoiling. Well, I've started working into the skies here, so that messy stage is already in progress. I'll have to do it anyway to get to the core of the painting there. Okay, some nice dark tones. In that sense, if I would have had the exact cloud I wanted to have here, it would have been quite easy just to copy it from a photograph. But I'm building up the effect, which doesn't quite exist on the photograph. It's very hard to camera doesn't, well, you know it all. Camera doesn't quite catches what you actually experienced. You immediately look at the screen, what you just taken a photo of, and you just immediately go disappointingly, yeah, this is not how it is there. Where is my easel and my paints? But if they would have been there, I wouldn't have been quick enough to catch it. So the memory and my imagination is the only way of reproducing it. Okay, maybe my flat brush need to be replaced by maybe a different shape brush. Okay, I keep catching something here. Some old paint, maybe I'm picking it up from the palette. So some small nuances that might be a little bit boring to watch me paint, but they will be making all the difference eventually. excuse me. Again, the camera doesn't quite catch the texture here, which I'm quite happy with. A little dip, a little highlight, a little edge coming out, a bit more close to us, a little edge which is disappearing. I think I need to get some paler colors for the ground as well. So it does look like the clouds are floating. So when I was talking about finishing 3/4 of the painting, surface wise, yes, times wise, maybe not, because it might be only a little bit what's need to be done, but it's knowing where it's going to be or how much. Okay, something's happening now here. That's an old one, this is a new one. Okay, one stroke is fresh, one stroke is already dry. A tiny bit of extra boldness. ziggy-zaggy freshness. Okay, start having a lot of tiny little darks, which we'll need to move into range of grays. So at the moment there are loads of very similar repetitive mark making, but I like the energy of it. Let's have some flatter bottoms for some of these clouds to give it a little more stability at the base. So maybe a tiny bit more darker tones, so it's not all similar light. So it's getting the energy on your canvas first and then gently taming it, but not losing it. If you lose that energy from the original starting point, you lose the point of interest in the whole piece. The dynamics here are really good still. Let's try not to paint just pretty clouds. I'm trying to create that space and volume and the fleeting moment of white. That wow effect. Of an unexpected view. Still quite a lot of work that need to be done on these clouds. Might even need to do a bit more of a pencil sketch because I keep changing my mind what I want to do with them. So maybe identifying the overall tonal plan rather than just making it up and seeing what happens. I might be going in circles for a while. I'm enjoying the strokes, I'm enjoying them, the energy of it. I haven't worked out the composition of them. That's why they're a little bit similar. And I'm quite happy with the clouds above, I'm quite happy with the foreground and then the valley below. Maybe tiny bit of light on the valley below. I can maybe do it now and stop at that because the whole valley is dry. I can just gently touch it without being worried that I can spoil it. So I'll go for similar colors, just tiny bit paler version. Violet, crimson and ochre with some white. So I've got a nice strong light. I just smudge it gently. Let's make it disappear in some places. Soften it a little. Let's see the previous color. A bit more stronger. That's quite exciting light. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that color works quite nice for some maybe parts of the bottom parts of even the clouds. I think I might need to go back to some of these shapes and flatten them. Start to create too much unneeded attention. It might allow me to summarize them as if I were just to start doing a little bit more of a blank canvas. Looking even better like this. All I might need to do afterwards is some bolder might. Wiping a few things. So it's a fascinating technique using the sponge. Okay, that's need to be done with some fresh blue, maybe there. Right, I think I'm going to stop for tonight. Loads of progress been made. Still quite a few things to go, but yeah, as I said, the surface been the cover of the surface, the amount of things been done. I've done a good, probably most of them, the volume of the work. It's messing about now with nuances here, right in the center. And maybe putting a couple of tiny bit touch-up, soft touch-ups on maybe in the top part of the cloud. But I'm very, very excited to see how it will be finishing. I think I might let it dry so it preserves the current colors and tones, and then just build up on that volume and then those tones as it dries. So I'm going to stop my recording for today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank